The transit station buzzed with activity as hundreds of species moved through the diplomatic quarter of Nexus Prime. Among the crowd, a small human child walked beside her guardian, drawing curious stares from passers-by. The girl couldn't have been more than 8 standard years old, with dark hair pulled into 2 neat braids and bright green eyes that took in everything around her with quiet wonder. Her guardian was impossible to miss. Scales the color of deep emerald caught the artificial light as the massive dragon moved with surprising grace through the crowd. Vakthros stood nearly 4 meters tall, even with his posture slightly hunched to avoid the ceiling fixtures. His wings were folded tight against his back, and his tail curved carefully to avoid knocking into anyone. Despite his fearsome appearance, his amber eyes held unmistakable warmth as he glanced down at the small human holding his clawed hand. "Remember, little flame," Vakthros rumbled in a voice like distant thunder. "The Academy welcomes all species. You will meet children from worlds you have never heard of." The girl, whose name was Emma, nodded seriously. "I know, Papa Vac. Mom told me to be respectful and listen to my teachers. Your mother is wise," Vakthros agreed, his tail swishing slightly with amusement. "Though I suspect she worries too much." "You have a good heart, Emma." They approached the grand entrance of the Galactic Youth Academy, an institution famous across dozens of star systems for fostering understanding between species. The building itself was a marvel of engineering, with sections adjusted for different atmospheric requirements and gravity preferences. Children of all shapes and sizes streamed through the various entrances, some walking, some floating, others scuttling on multiple legs. Emma squeezed Vakthros's claw a bit tighter. The dragon noticed and knelt down, bringing his massive head level with hers. His breath smelled like warm stone and cinnamon. "You are nervous," he observed. "A little," Emma admitted. "What if nobody wants to be friends with me? Humans are really rare out here." Vakthros made a sound somewhere between a purr and a growl, a sound Emma had learned meant he was thinking carefully. "Let me tell you something, little flame. When your mother found you on that abandoned station, you were barely 2 seasons old. You cried for 3 days straight. I told her we should find a human colony to take you. That we knew nothing of raising human younglings." Emma had heard this story before, but she listened quietly. "Your mother, stubborn creature that she is, refused. She said you chose us when you grabbed her talon and stopped crying. And do you know what I discovered?" His eyes gleamed. "Raising a human child is not so different from raising a dragon hatchling. You need food, warmth, protection, and love. The shape of the one giving these things matters far less than the giving itself." He touched her forehead gently with one claw. "You are Emma Stormheart, daughter of dragons. Anyone who does not wish to know you is missing out on something extraordinary." Emma felt her chest swell with confidence. She stood a bit straighter and nodded. "I'll make you proud, Papa Vac." "You already do," he replied simply. "Now go. Learn much. I will be here when the day ends." Emma took a deep breath and walked through the entrance designed for smaller species. The doorway scanned her, registering her biometrics and directing her to Classroom 7 in the multi-species wing. Her shoes squeaked slightly on the polished floor as she followed the glowing path projected for her benefit. The classroom was bigger than she expected, with various sized desks and chairs arranged in a circular pattern. A holographic display floated in the center, currently showing a slowly rotating image of a distant nebula. Several students were already present. Emma spotted a Thresson child, their blue crystalline body refracting light in beautiful patterns. A pair of Corvin siblings sat together, their fur-covered bodies and multiple arms gesturing as they communicated in rapid clicks. A floating Aurelian shifted colors from calm blue to curious purple as Emma entered. And then there was Zexkar. The Kralvian stood near the back of the room, easily the largest student present. His species was known across the galaxy as warriors, and sometimes as bullies. Zexkar had the typical Kralvian features, including gray armored skin, 4 arms ending in thick fingers, and a crest of bone ridges along his skull. His eyes, small and dark, fixed on Emma immediately. Emma chose a desk designed for human-sized species and sat down, placing her datapad in front of her. She offered a smile to the Thressin child nearest her, who chimed a pleasant greeting in return. The Aurelian drifted closer, curious about the rare human. "I am Whisper of Winds," the Aurelian said in surprisingly good standard Galactic. "You are human, yes?" "I have never met human before. I'm Emma," she replied, happy to make a friend already. "Nice to meet you. Your kind is rare in this sector," the Thressin chimed, their voice like bells. "I am called Brightness After Rain. My people find humans fascinating. You have such soft exteriors but survive in surprising places." Emma was about to respond when a heavy hand slammed down on her desk. She looked up to find Zexkar looming over her, his forearms crossed in what was clearly an intimidating posture. "Human," he growled. "You sit in my spot." Emma glanced around. There were no assigned seats yet, and several empty desks remained throughout the room. "I don't think seats are assigned," she said politely. "But if this is important to you, I can move." "Yes, move," Zexkar demanded. "Humans are weak. You should sit in back where weak things belong." Whisper of Winds shifted to an alarmed orange color. Brightness After Rain's chimes took on a discordant tone. The Corvin siblings stopped their conversation to watch nervously. Emma felt her face grow warm, but she remembered Papa Voc's words about having a good heart and being respectful. "I'm not weak," she said calmly, "but I don't want to fight with you. I'll move." She gathered her datapad and started to stand. But Zexkar's hand shot out and knocked the device from her grip. It clattered across the floor. "That's right," the Kralvian sneered. "You run. That is what prey species do." Something flickered in Emma's eyes. A brief flash that might have been imagination, or might have been something else entirely. She picked up her datapad, checked it for damage, and moved to a different desk without another word. But Whisper of Winds had seen that flash, and the Aurelian's colors shifted to thoughtful gray. The teacher arrived moments later, a kind Melloran, whose tentacles waved in greeting as she introduced herself as Educator Shlana. She began the class with introductions, asking each student to share their name, homeworld, and something interesting about themselves. When Zexkar's turn came, he puffed his chest out. "I am Zexkar of the Kralvian warrior clans. My people are the strongest fighters in 12 sectors. I will one day lead armies." Several students looked impressed. The Kralvians had a fearsome reputation. When Emma's turn came, she stood and spoke clearly. "I'm Emma Stormheart. I don't really have a homeworld since I was raised in space. Something interesting about me is that my family is a dragon named Vakthros, and his mate, a dragon named Serathis." The room went completely silent. Even Educator Shlana's tentacles froze mid-wave. "Dragons?" one of the Corvin siblings whispered. "The dragons? You were raised by actual dragons?" Brightness After Rain chimed in astonishment. Zexkar made a dismissive sound. "She lies. Dragons do not raise other species. They barely tolerate anyone." Emma shrugged. "Papa Vac dropped me off this morning. He'll pick me up later if you want to meet him." "That will not be necessary," Educator Shlana interjected quickly, her tentacles waving in a pattern that suggested nervousness. "Emma's family situation is her own business. Now, let us continue with our first lesson about interstellar communication protocols." Throughout the lesson, Emma noticed Zexkar staring at her with an expression somewhere between disbelief and calculation. She tried to focus on the educator's words, but the weight of his attention made it difficult. When the first break period arrived, Emma headed to the nutrition station to get a drink of water. The station was equipped to provide sustenance for dozens of different species, from liquid nutrients to raw minerals. Emma had just filled her container when Zexkar appeared beside her, his 3 classmates flanking him. "Dragons do not adopt," he stated flatly. "You are a liar, human." Emma sipped her water. "I'm not lying. My mom found me when I was little. They raised me." "Impossible," one of Zexkar's friends said. "A Herlock with scales similar to a Kralvian's but smaller. Dragons are dangerous. They hoard treasures and destroy entire fleets." "My parents aren't like that," Emma said, starting to feel frustrated. "Papa Vac is a historian, And Mom is a terraform consultant. They're really nice. Zexkar's laugh was harsh. Nice? Dragons? You are either a liar or a fool, human. My sire told me stories of dragons. They are monsters who think themselves better than everyone. Emma's hands clenched around her water container. She thought about Papa Vac's gentle voice, about how Mom would curl her massive body around Emma when she had nightmares, making her feel safe. She thought about being taught to read while sitting between Papa Vac's front claws, about Mom singing ancient dragon lullabies that made the air shimmer. They're not monsters, Emma said quietly, but there was an edge to her voice now. Don't call them that. Or what? Zexkar leaned down, his face close to hers. What will you do, little human? Cry? Run to your imaginary dragon parents? Back away from her. Whisper of Winds said, drifting between them. The Aurelian had shifted to an angry red color. You are being cruel, Zexkar. Stay out of this, cloud creature, Zexkar snapped. He reached out with one of his 4 hands and shoved Whisper of Winds aside. The Aurelian tumbled through the air, unable to stabilize quickly enough. Emma moved before thinking. She caught Whisper of Winds, steadying her new friend. Are you okay? I am unharmed, Whisper of Winds chimed, though their colors flickered with distress. Thank you. Zexkar laughed again. Look at the weak ones helping each other. Pathetic. 9. Brightness, after rain chimed in alarm tone. I am reporting this to Educator Schlana. Go ahead, Zexkar said dismissively. Tell the teacher that we had a conversation. I touched nothing. Broke nothing. The cloud creature just has poor balance. He was right, Emma realized. He'd been careful not to actually hurt anyone or damage anything. He'd just been mean, and meanness was harder to prove than violence. She'd learned that from Papa Vac's stories about politics and power. The rest of the day passed with Zexkar and his friends making quiet comments whenever they could get away with it. The whispers were just loud enough for Emma to hear, but quiet enough that Educator Schlana didn't notice. Comments about humans being fragile, about Emma making up stories for attention, about her being weird. By the time school ended, Emma's good mood from the morning had evaporated. She walked slowly to the pickup area. Her shoulders slumped. The moment she saw Vakthros waiting, she ran to him and wrapped her arms around his foreleg, the highest part she could reach. Little flame? His voice held immediate concern. What troubles you? What troubles you? There's a bully, Emma mumbled into his scales. A Kralvian named Zexkar. He says you and Mom aren't real. That I'm a liar. He knocked my datapad down and pushed my friend and called us weak. Vakthros was very still for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had not changed in volume, but something in it made several nearby adults suddenly decide they had urgent business elsewhere. Did he harm you? No, he was just really mean. And your friend? Whisper of Winds is okay. They're an Aurelian. Vakthros nodded slowly. His tail swayed in a pattern Emma recognized as him thinking. Would you like me to speak with this youngling's parents? Emma considered it. Part of her wanted Papa Vac to scare Zexkar so badly he never looked at her again. But another part of her, the part that Papa Vac and Mom had nurtured, knew that wouldn't really solve anything. Not yet, she said finally. Maybe he'll get bored and leave me alone. Perhaps, Vakthros said, though he sounded doubtful. But Emma, remember this. You are not weak. Being kind is not weakness. Being patient is not weakness. But neither is standing up for yourself and those you care about. There is a difference between provoking a fight and refusing to be victimized. What's the difference? Intent, wisdom, and knowing when each is necessary. Vakthros replied. You will learn this in time. For now, know that your mother and I are here if you need us, always. Emma nodded against his scales. Can we go home? I want to tell Mom about my day. Of course, little flame. As they walked through the station toward the transport platforms, neither noticed the small flying drone that had been recording their conversation, and neither noticed when that drone transmitted its data to a very interested Kralvian family halfway across the station. The following days at the Galactic Youth Academy fell into an uncomfortable pattern. Zexkar seemed to have made Emma his personal project, finding new ways to make her school life difficult, without quite crossing the line into behavior that would get him in serious trouble. He would accidentally bump into her in hallways, causing her to drop her materials. He convinced other students to avoid sitting near her, claiming humans carried strange diseases. He mocked her answers in class. Even when educator Shlana confirmed they were correct, his favorite tactic was to bring up her dragon family whenever possible, speaking loudly about how humans were known liars and attention seekers. Emma tried to follow Papa Vak's advice about patience and kindness. She helped Whisper of Winds with difficult assignments. She shared her lunch with Brightness After Rain, who found the textures of human food fascinating. She even attempted to be friendly with some of Zexkar's followers, hoping to show them she wasn't whatever their leader claimed, but it wore on her. Each day felt a little heavier. She started sleeping poorly, which Mom noticed immediately. Sarathis, Emma's adoptive mother, was even larger than Vakthros, and her deep purple scales sometimes flickered with energy when she was emotional. "You are not eating properly," Sarathis observed one evening as they shared dinner in their residential unit. The space was designed for dragons, which meant high ceilings and reinforced furniture. Emma's room was a smaller, human-sized space built into one corner, carefully climate-controlled and decorated with things she loved. Emma pushed food around her plate. "I'm just not very hungry, Mom." Sarathis and Vakthros exchanged a look that Emma had learned meant they were having one of their silent conversations. Dragons who had been mated for centuries could communicate volumes with just a glance. "This Kralvian youngling continues to trouble you," Vakthros stated rather than asked. "He's just being a jerk," Emma mumbled. "I can handle it." "The question is not whether you can handle it," Sarathis said, her voice like silk over steel. "The question is whether you should have to. I could visit the school. Speak with his family." Emma's head snapped up in alarm. "No, Mom. If you do that, everyone will think I can't take care of myself. It'll make everything worse." "Will it?" Sarathis tilted her massive head. "Or will it establish boundaries that should exist regardless?" "Dragons solve problems by being big and scary," Emma said, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." "You meant it exactly like that," Vakthros rumbled, but his eyes held understanding rather than anger. "And you are not entirely wrong. Our species does have advantages in physical negotiations. But you are not only human, little flame. You are also ours, and that means something." "What does it mean?" "It means you carry more than human heritage," Sarathis said quietly. "We have raised you with our values, our stories, our ways. You have learned things that most humans never will. The question becomes, when do you choose to use those teachings?" Emma thought about that as she went to bed that night. She'd learned many things from her dragon parents. She knew meditation techniques that helped her focus her mind. She understood concepts of honor and dignity that dragons held sacred. She'd been taught to read opponents and situations, skills Papa Vak used in his historical research and negotiations. But she'd also learned something else. Something Mom and Papa Vak had demonstrated every day of her life. Dragons were patient, but their patience had limits. They were kind, but not soft. They believed in giving others chances, but not infinite ones. And when those limits were reached, dragons did not hesitate to act. The next day at school started normally enough. Emma arrived with Papa Vak, said goodbye, and headed to her classroom. She'd finished her homework and actually felt ready for the day's lessons on xenobiology. Maybe today would be better. It was not better. During the mid-morning break, Emma went to her locker to switch out her data pads. The lockers were designed to accommodate different species, with varying sizes and security protocols based on each student's needs. Emma's was a standard human-sized unit with a simple code lock. She found it already open, the door hanging loose. Her belongings were scattered on the floor. Her spare clothes were shredded. Her collection of interesting rocks that Papa Vak had helped her identify were crushed to powder. Worst of all, her personal data pad, the one that held pictures of her family and her private journal, was missing. Emma stood frozen, staring at the destruction. Other students gathered around, whispering. She heard Zexkar's laugh before she saw him. Perhaps the human should be more careful with her belongings, he said loudly. Such fragile things, just like their owners. Educator Shlana arrived quickly, her tentacles waving in distress. What happened here? I don't know, Emma said quietly. I opened my locker and found it like this. Security recordings will show who did this, the educator said firmly. Vandalism is taken very seriously at this academy. Zexkar shrugged his 4 shoulders. The recordings will show nothing, I am certain. Perhaps the human did this herself for attention. That is a serious accusation, Educator Shlana said sharply. Is it? She claims to be raised by dragons, something everyone knows is impossible. She clearly seeks attention. Emma felt something crack inside her. Not break, but crack, like ice beginning to shift. Give me back my datapad, she said, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. I have no idea what you speak of, Zexkar replied innocently. The recordings might not show you at my locker, Emma continued, but I bet they'll show you with my datapad once they check. Give it back now, and this doesn't have to get worse. Zexkar's eyes narrowed. Worse? What will you do, human? Cry? Tell stories about your imaginary dragon parents coming to save you? The other students had gone quiet. Even Educator Shlana seemed uncertain how to proceed. This was a delicate situation. The Kralvians were an influential species, and Zexkar's family was apparently quite powerful. But humans, while rare, were also protected under Academy rules. Emma took a slow breath. Just like Mom had taught her when practicing meditation. She felt the anger, acknowledged it, but did not let it control her. When she spoke again, her voice was different, calmer, colder. My parents are not imaginary, she said. Vakthros of the Stormwing Sept and Serathis of the Deepfire clan are very real. They chose to raise me, which makes me both human and dragon-taught. You've spent a week testing me because you don't believe that. Fine. I've been patient. I've been kind. I've followed the rules. But you've now destroyed my property and stolen from me. She stepped closer to Zexkar, who, despite his much larger size, suddenly looked uncertain. There was something in the small human's eyes that hadn't been there before, something that made his instincts whisper warnings. I want my datapad back in my hands within 1 hour, Emma said clearly. If I don't get it, I will call my Papa Vac. Not to complain. Not to ask him to scare you, but to invite him to come, observe my classes as is his right as my guardian. And when he arrives, I'm going to introduce him to everyone, including you, and then we'll see who's imaginary. The threat hung in the air. Several students backed away. Even Zexikar's friends looked nervous. Everyone in the room understood what Emma was actually saying. If her dragons were real, having one show up at school would confirm her truth, and if they were as protective as dragons were known to be, the dragon would certainly want to know why Emma felt the need to summon him. You are bluffing, Zexkar said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Emma pulled out her personal communicator, a device that could reach her parents anywhere in the system. Want to test that theory? Educator Shlana's tentacles waved frantically. Now, let us all calm down. Emma, there is no need for such measures. Zexkar, if you know anything about Emma's missing property, now would be the time to speak. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of Zexkar's friends, the Herlock, stepped forward nervously. He pulled Emma's datapad from his bag and placed it on a nearby desk. I found it, he said quickly. I was going to turn it in to Lost and Found. Of course you were, Emma said dryly. She picked up her datapad and checked it. Everything seemed intact. Though her privacy had clearly been violated, her jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. Educator Shlana looked between Emma and the Kralvian group. I will be reviewing all security footage. There will be consequences for whoever is responsible for this vandalism. Everyone returned to class. Now, the students dispersed quickly. Emma gathered what remained of her belongings. her hands shaking slightly now that the confrontation was over. Whisper of winds drifted beside her, their colors a concerned blue. "You were very brave," the Aurelian whispered. "I have never seen anyone stand up to Zexkar like that." Quote, "I was scared the whole time," Emma admitted quietly. "That is what makes it brave." Brightness after rain chimed softly. Acting despite fear, the rest of the day was subdued. Zexkar and his friends kept their distance, though Emma could feel their stares. She knew this wasn't over. She'd challenged him publicly, and from what she understood about Kralvian culture, that meant something significant. They valued strength and dominance, and she'd essentially called his bluff in front of everyone. When school ended, Emma was relieved to see Papa Vac waiting as always. This time, though, she wasn't the only one watching him. Several students and parents had stopped to stare at the massive dragon, perhaps wondering if he really was Emma's guardian. Papa Vac noticed the attention and seemed to understand immediately. "Interesting day. Little flame?" he asked as Emma approached. "You could say that," Emma replied. She quickly told him everything that had happened, including the confrontation and her threat to call him to school. Vakthros listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made the ground vibrate slightly. "You threatened to introduce your bully to your dragon father," he said with obvious amusement. "That is, actually quite clever. Psychological, rather than physical. Using reputation and possibility rather than direct action. I am impressed. You're not mad that I used you as a threat?" "Mad? Emma, I am a dragon. Being somewhat threatening is part of my nature. I am honored you felt comfortable leveraging our relationship to defend yourself, though I am curious whether you truly would have called me." Emma thought about it. "Yes," she said finally, "because I wasn't bluffing. If he hadn't given my stuff back, I would have wanted you here. Not to hurt anyone, but to show them you're real, that I'm not a liar." "Then you used your resources wisely," Vakthros said approvingly. "You assessed the situation, calculated your options, and chose the path most likely to achieve your goal with minimal conflict. Very dragon-like thinking. Is that good?" "It is effective," Vakthros replied. "Though I suspect this Zexkar will not simply back down after being challenged. Kralvians are proud. He will either accept your strength and leave you alone, or he will escalate to prove his own dominance." "What should I do if he escalates?" "That depends on how he escalates," Vakthros said. "But know this, little flame. You do not face anything alone. Your mother and I are always with you, whether physically present or not, and sometimes, the knowledge of the dragon at one's back is enough to give courage." They walked through the station together, and Emma felt better than she had in days. She'd stood up for herself. She'd used her words and her intelligence rather than violence. She'd shown strength without being cruel. Mom and Papa Vac would be proud. What Emma didn't know was that Zexkar had watched her leave with Vakthros, and for the first time since their conflict began, the young Kralvian felt something he wasn't accustomed to feeling. Doubt. The dragon was real, which meant everything else the human said might be real too. And if a small human child had been raised by creatures who could level cities and had lived for centuries, what exactly had she learned during that upbringing? Zexkar returned to his family's quarters that evening with those questions heavy on his mind. His father, a decorated Kralvian warrior, noticed his son's troubled expression immediately. "You are bothered," the elder Kralvian observed. "Speak." Zexkar told his father about Emma, about the week of bullying, about the confrontation. He expected approval for dominating a weaker student. Instead, his father's expression grew dark. "You have been tormenting a child raised by dragons?" his father said slowly. "For a week? She is just a human," Zexkar protested. "Weak and small. She is a human raised by dragons," his father corrected sharply. "Do you know nothing of history? Dragons do not take wards lightly. If they chose to raise this child, they see something in her. And they will have taught her their ways. She is still just one small human." "No," his father said firmly. She is a human with the backing of dragons. That makes her more dangerous than you understand. You have made a significant error, my son. Now you must decide how to correct it. Zexkar wanted to argue, but something in his father's tone made him pause. For the first time, he wondered if maybe he'd chosen the wrong target. And more importantly, he wondered what would happen if he didn't find a way to fix this mistake before the human's patience finally ran out. The next morning brought unexpected change. When Emma arrived at school, she found Zexkar waiting outside her classroom, but instead of his usual aggressive posture, he stood alone, his forearms held in a neutral position that Emma had learned indicated uncertainty in Kralvian body language. "Human," he said as she approached. Emma stopped a safe distance away, wary. "My name is Emma." "Emma," he corrected, the word seeming difficult for him. Whisper of Winds, who had been floating beside Emma, shifted to a protective orange color. "Do you wish me to stay?" the Aurelian asked. Emma appreciated the support but shook her head. "It's okay. I'll be fine." She looked at Zexkar. "We can talk over there." She pointed to a corner of the hallway where they'd have some privacy, but would still be visible to others. Zexkar followed her to the spot and seemed to struggle with what to say. Finally, he spoke. "My father says I have made a mistake with you." "Your father is right," Emma said simply. The Kralvian's crest ridges twitched, a sign of irritation, but he controlled himself. "I did not believe your claims about being raised by dragons. My father explained to me that this was foolish of me. He says dragons do not take such responsibilities lightly." "They don't." Emma agreed. "Mom and Papa Vac chose to raise me." "They didn't have to. Why did they choose you?" Emma thought about how to explain it. "Mom says it was because I grabbed her talon and trusted her even though I was too young to understand what she was. Papa Vac says it's because humans and dragons aren't as different as people think. We both value family, loyalty, knowledge. We both can be fierce when protecting what we love." Zexkar was quiet for a moment. "Among my people, strength is everything. The strong lead and the weak follow. This is natural order. Dragons think differently," Emma said. "They believe strength includes more than just physical power. Intelligence is strength. Patience is strength. Knowing when to act and when to wait is strength. Papa Vac once told me that the mightiest dragon can be defeated by a clever opponent. But wisdom defeats everyone in the end." "This is strange thinking to me," Zexkar admitted. "But my father also said something else. He said I have been acting without honor, that I chose an opponent who had done nothing to challenge me, and that I used my advantages to torment rather than to protect." Emma watched him carefully. This felt like an apology, but she wasn't entirely sure. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I am trying to understand if I should fear you or respect you," Zexkar said bluntly. "You are small and weak in body. But when you stood against me yesterday, I saw something in your eyes. Something that reminded me of warriors I have seen. You were not afraid, even when you should have been." "I was afraid," Emma corrected. "But Mom taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting correctly despite the fear. She said dragons learn this young because they're powerful enough to cause great harm, so they must learn great control." "And you have learned this control?" "I'm trying to," Emma said honestly. "It's hard sometimes, especially when people are mean for no reason." We are." Zexkar's crest ridges lowered slightly, a gesture Emma recognized as shame. "I was mean because I did not understand. And because—" he hesitated. "Because others in my clan expect me to be strong always. To dominate. When you arrived, small and different, I thought making you submit would prove my strength to others. That's not how strength works," Emma said gently. "At least, not the kind of strength that matters. Papa Vac says that anyone can be cruel to someone weaker. True strength is being kind when you have the power to be otherwise. Emma, your dragon father is very wise. He's been alive for over 800 years, Emma said. He's had time to figure things out. Zek's car made a sound that might have been amusement. Then his expression grew serious again. I destroyed your belongings. I stole from you. I made your time at this academy unpleasant. Among my people, these offenses require compensation. What kind of compensation? That is for you to decide. Zekskar said. You are the wronged party. In Kralvian tradition, you may demand service, material payment, or trial by combat. Emma blinked. I don't want to fight you. You'd win. Emma blinked. Would I? Zekskar asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his tone now. You are dragon-raised. Surely they taught you to defend yourself? They did, Emma admitted. But Papa Vac always says violence should be the last option, not the first. He says most problems can be solved through words and understanding. And if I had not come to you this morning, if I had continued my behavior, Emma met his gaze steadily. Then eventually, you would have pushed me past patience into action. And I would have called both my parents to the school, not to fight for me, but to stand with me while I stood up to you. Because that's what families do. Something shifted in Zekskar's expression. You truly believe they would come? Not to punish me themselves, but to support you? I know they would, Emma said with absolute certainty. That's what family means. The Kralvian was quiet for a long moment. This is different from my understanding. In my clan, young ones must prove themselves alone. Parents provide training, but each must establish dominance individually. That sounds lonely, Emma said softly. Zekskar's crest ridges twitched again, but this time the gesture seemed almost vulnerable. It is the way, but perhaps there are other ways that also work. Emma made a decision then. Here's what I want for compensation. I want you to stop being mean to other students. Not just me. Everyone. Use your strength to protect people who need help instead of hurting them. That's what Mom and Papa Vac taught me strength is really for. Zekskar stared at her as if she'd spoken in an alien language. You want me to become a protector? I want you to be the kind of strong that actually matters, Emma said. The kind that makes others feel safer, not scared. And if I agree to this, then we can be friends, Emma said. Or at least friendly. I think you could be good if you tried. The bell rang, signaling the start of classes. Zekskar looked like he wanted to say more but simply nodded. I will think about what you have said, Emma Stormheart. They entered the classroom together, which caused a few surprised looks from their classmates. Educator Shlana's tentacles waved in what might have been relief. The day's lesson was on interspecies diplomacy, and Emma found herself paying extra attention. It felt relevant somehow. During lunch, Zekskar sat at his usual table with his followers, but Emma noticed him watching when a larger student tried to take food from a smaller one. The Kralvian stood, walked over, and returned the food with a firm word. The larger student backed down immediately. Zekskar caught Emma's eye across the cafeteria, and she offered him a small nod of approval. The days that followed brought gradual change. Zekskar didn't become Emma's best friend overnight, but he stopped actively making her life difficult. More than that, he began doing what she'd asked. When he saw bullying behavior, he intervened. When smaller students needed help reaching things or carrying heavy items, he assisted. His followers, confused at first, slowly began to follow his example. Whisper of Winds commented on it during study period. Zekskar is different now. He actually helped me with the gravity math problem yesterday, instead of mocking me for not understanding. People can change, Emma said. Sometimes they just need someone to show them a different way. Your dragon parents taught you this wisdom? They taught me a lot of things, Emma said. But mostly they taught me by example. They're some of the most powerful beings in this sector, but they choose to use that power carefully. They could scare everyone into doing what they want, but instead they earn respect through their actions. Brightness After Rain chimed thoughtfully. I would like to meet these dragons someday. They sound remarkable, Emma smiled. Maybe you can. Mom said she wants to meet my friends. The semester continued, and Emma settled into school life more comfortably. She excelled in xenobiology and struggled with advanced mathematics. She made friends with several species and even began a study group that included Whisper of Winds, Brightness After Rain, and the Corvin siblings. Zex Carr occasionally joined them, his strength proving useful for certain physical experiments. One afternoon, about 2 months into the school year, an incident occurred in the recreational area. A group of older students from another class had cornered a young Prelian child, a species known for being timid and physically weak. They were tossing the child's belongings back and forth, laughing as the little Prelian tried unsuccessfully to retrieve them. Emma saw it happen and immediately started walking toward the group. Whisper of Winds drifted beside her, colors shifting to determined red. Before they arrived, however, Zexkar was already there. "Return the belongings," the Kralvian said firmly. The older students, 2 Herlock siblings, looked at him with amusement. "Why? We're just playing." "No," Zexkar said. "You are being cruel. Return the belongings now." One of the Herlocks laughed. "What happened to you, Zexkar? You used to be strong. Now you act like a caretaker." "I am stronger now than I was before," Zexkar replied calmly. "Before, I used my strength to make myself feel important. Now I use it to make others feel safe." "Which do you think requires more courage?" The second Herlock stepped forward aggressively. "Maybe we should test which kind of strength is better." Emma arrived at that moment. "Is there a problem?" the first Herlock sneered. "Just the human who thinks she's special because she tells dragon stories." "They're not stories," a new voice said. All heads turned to see Educator Schlana approaching with another adult. This one was massive, with deep purple scales that seemed to shimmer with internal energy. Sarathis had arrived for the parent observation day that Emma had completely forgotten about. The recreational area went absolutely silent. Every student, every teacher, every nearby adult froze. The dragon was even more impressive in person than descriptions could convey. She moved with fluid grace despite her size, her amber eyes taking in the scene with ancient intelligence. "Emma," Sarathis said warmly, "I see you have made friends." Her gaze shifted to the Herlocks and the Prelian child, holding his recovered belongings. "And I see not all students here understand appropriate behavior." The Herlocks looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. One of them stammered an apology, and they both fled quickly. The Prelian child stared up at Sarathis with wide eyes. "Thank you," the small creature whispered. "You are very scary but also very nice." Sarathis made a sound like wind through canyons, which Emma recognized as her laughter. "I accept this as a great compliment. Little one," she looked at Zexkar. "You are the Kralvian child I have heard about." Zexkar straightened to his full height, meeting Sarathis's gaze with more courage than most would have managed. "I am Zexkar. I have wronged your daughter. I am working to be better." "So I see," Sarathis said. "Emma speaks of this progress. Tell me, young Kralvian, what changed your mind?" "Your daughter taught me that strength without purpose is just violence," Zexkar said carefully. "She showed me a different way to be strong, one that requires more courage than I knew." Sarathis studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone present. She lowered her massive head in a slight bow of respect, a gesture dragons rarely gave to anyone, let alone children. "You have learned a valuable lesson," she said, "and you had the strength to change your behavior based on that lesson. That is worthy of acknowledgement. Grow well." Zexkar of the Kralvians. The young Kralvian looked like he might cry, though his species didn't produce tears. He bowed back, all 4 arms crossed in the highest gesture of respect his culture knew. Emma felt her chest swell with pride. Pride in Zexkar for how far he'd come. Pride in her mom for handling the situation perfectly. Pride in herself for not giving up on someone who'd been cruel to her. The rest of Parent Observation Day went smoothly. Sarathis attended classes with Emma, her presence causing continuous whispers and stares, but she was patient and kind, answering questions about dragon culture and biology that fascinated the students. She even helped with a geology lesson, using her own knowledge of deep earth minerals to supplement the educator's teaching. When the day ended, Emma left with her mother while her classmates watched in awe. Zek's car stood at the front of the crowd, and Emma waved to him. He raised one of his 4 hands in return, a gesture that felt like a promise of continued friendship. "You handled everything here very well, little spark," Sarathis said as they walked through the station. "Vakthros and I worried when you first started school. We wondered if our way of raising you would make things difficult." "It did make things difficult at first," Emma admitted. "But it also gave me the tools to handle those difficulties." Zek's car was mean because he didn't understand. "I could have been mean back, but you and Papa Vac taught me better. We taught you to see past immediate conflict to longer solutions," Sarathis agreed. "To understand that today's enemy might become tomorrow's ally if given the chance to grow. This is why dragons live so long. We understand that time changes all things, including people. Do you think Zek's car will really change? For good? I think you planted seeds that will continue to grow," Sarathis said. "Whether he becomes a better person entirely depends on him. But you gave him the chance. That is all anyone can do." They reached their home, where Vakthros was waiting with dinner prepared. Emma told him everything about the day, about Zek's car's continued progress, about Mom's appearance at school, about how her classmates had reacted. "I am proud of you, little flame," Vakthros said when she finished. "You faced a challenge that many adults struggle with. You stood firm without being cruel. You gave chances without being weak. You are becoming the person we hoped you would be." "I'm still just a kid," Emma protested. "I'm still learning." "As are we all," Vakthros replied. "I am over 8 centuries old, and still learn new things each day. Age gives experience, but wisdom comes from how we use that experience. You, little one, are wise beyond your years." That night, as Emma lay in her bed with her room's artificial starfield projected on the ceiling, she thought about everything that had happened. She'd been bullied, stood up for herself, and helped someone change for the better. She'd shown her classmates that dragons were real and that being raised by them meant something special. But most importantly, she'd learned that strength came in many forms. Physical power was one form, but wisdom, patience, and kindness were forms of strength too. And sometimes, the strongest thing you could do was give someone the chance to be better than they'd been. In his quarters across the station, Zek's car thought about the dragon who had bowed to him. Not out of fear or obligation, but out of genuine respect. No adult had ever shown him such acknowledgement. His father had expressed approval. His teachers had given grades. But this dragon had seen his efforts to change and honored them. He thought about Emma's words from weeks ago, about strength being used to protect rather than to dominate, about being the kind of strong that made others feel safe. It was harder than he'd expected, this new path. His old friends sometimes questioned him. His instincts still urged him toward aggressive dominance. But every time he helped someone instead of hurting them, he felt something strange and new. He felt actually strong. Not strong because others feared him, but strong because he was choosing a harder path. Strong because he was changing who he was becoming. Strong because a small human girl had challenged him to be better, and he'd found the courage to try. The next day at school, Emma found a package at her desk. Inside was a set of perfectly preserved geological samples, the kind used in advanced studies. A note accompanied them in Kralvian script, which she'd been learning to read. "For your rock collection. To replace what I destroyed. And to thank you for showing me a different way. Zek's car." Zek's car. Emma smiled and carefully placed the samples in her new locker, the one that nobody had vandalized since that first incident. Across the room, Zek's car watched her reaction and felt that strange sensation again. Pride. Not in dominating someone, but in making something better. As class began, educator Shlana noticed the subtle changes in her students. Emma was more confident, participating actively. Zek's car was more engaged, helping others instead of mocking them. The whole classroom dynamic had shifted into something healthier. The Melleran educator's tentacles waved with satisfaction. This was why she taught, to see young minds grow and learn not just facts, but how to be better beings. The school year continued with its usual challenges and triumphs. Emma maintained her friendship with Whisper of Winds and Brightness After Rain, while building a careful friendship with Zexcar. They would never be close in the way she was with her other friends, but there was mutual respect and understanding between them. When Parent Day came again near the end of the term, both Vakthros and Serathis attended together. The sight of two massive dragons moving through the academy halls caused significant stir, but their gentle interactions with the students quickly put everyone at ease. Zexcar introduced them to his father, who expressed his own respect for what they'd accomplished with Emma. "You have raised a remarkable child," the elder Kralvian said. "She taught my son lessons I could not. Perhaps our species could learn from each other." "Perhaps we all could," Vakthros replied, "if we choose to see beyond our differences to our common ground." As the school year ended, Emma reflected on everything she'd learned. Not just the academic lessons about xenobiology and interstellar mathematics, but the deeper lessons about courage, patience, and the many forms strength could take. She'd arrived scared and uncertain, been tested by cruelty, and emerged stronger and wiser. Most importantly, she'd learned that being raised by dragons didn't make her less human. It made her more fully herself, carrying the best of both worlds. Her human adaptability and empathy combined with dragon wisdom and strength. She was Emma Stormheart, daughter of dragons, friend to many, and exactly who she needed to be. And in the years to come, as she grew and faced new challenges, she would always remember the lesson from that first difficult school year. Being truly strong meant having the power to harm but choosing instead to help. It meant standing up for yourself and others. It meant giving people chances to be better while maintaining your own dignity and boundaries. It meant being exactly what her parents had raised her to be, a bridge between worlds, a person who understood that differences made the galaxy stronger, not weaker, and that sometimes, the most unlikely friendships taught the most valuable lessons.